You texts first, always. Not because you are desperate, not because you have no pride. You text first because you genuinely want to know how they are doing. You check in. You remember the thing they mentioned 3 weeks ago and you follow up on it. You show up when they say they are struggling, even when they did not ask you to. You rearrange your schedule. You give the advice, the time, the energy, the emotional space. You hold people so carefully. And then you wait. You wait for someone to do that for you. And sometimes they do, a little. And you tell yourself that is enough, that you do not need what you give. That wanting reciprocity is selfish somehow. That real love is unconditional, which you have convinced yourself means love without expectation of return. So you keep giving, you keep showing up, and somewhere underneath all of it, in a place you do not look at directly, there is this quiet ache. This question you will not quite ask out loud. Why is it always me? You are not needy. You are not weak. You are not loving the wrong people because you are bad at choosing them. What is happening to you has a psychological explanation that almost nobody talks about honestly. And it starts much earlier than the relationships you are in right now. There is a concept in developmental psychology called the anxious attachment style. And before you roll your eyes, because you have heard that phrase thrown around so casually it has almost lost its meaning, stay with me. Because the version I want to explain to you goes deeper than the surface level content you have probably already seen. Attachment theory, developed by psychiatrist John Bowlby and later expanded by researcher Mary Ainsworth, describes the emotional bonds we form with our earliest caregivers. And here is the part that matters for you specifically. When a child's caregiver is inconsistently available, warm and present one moment, distracted or withdrawn the next, the child's nervous system learns something very specific. It learns that love is unpredictable. That connection is available sometimes but not reliably. And in response, the child does the only rational thing. It turns up the volume on its attachment behaviors. It becomes more attuned, more alert, more giving, more accommodating, because in that child's experience, making yourself very needed, very present, very useful is the strategy that keeps love from disappearing. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a vending machine that sometimes gives you a snack when you press the button and sometimes does not. Research on something called variable reward schedules, the same psychology behind slot machines, shows that unpredictable rewards actually create stronger behavioral patterns than consistent ones. You press the button more, not less, when you cannot predict the outcome. Your brain becomes fixated on cracking the code. That is what happened to you, not with a vending machine. With love, and the pattern your nervous system learned back then did not stay in childhood. It followed you into every significant relationship you have ever had. It is the reason you overgive. Not because you are foolish, not because you do not know better, but because somewhere in your nervous system, giving more is the strategy that feels like it might finally make love stable. Now let's go into the brain, because this is where it gets specific, and this is where understanding it actually starts to feel like relief. There is a structure in your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC. It is involved in processing emotional pain, and neuroscience research has shown something extraordinary about it. Social pain, the pain of being rejected, ignored, or feeling unloved, activates the ACC in a way that is nearly identical to physical pain. This is not metaphorical. When someone you love does not text back, when you realize the effort is not being matched, when you feel invisible to someone whose visibility you crave, your brain processes that as a genuine wound. For people who love hard, this pain response is heightened. Because your nervous system learned early that inconsistent love was the norm, your brain became exquisitely sensitive to signals of potential withdrawal. Your ACC is more reactive to perceived disconnection than the average person's. Every silence that lasts a bit too long, every read receipt with no response. Every time someone important to you seems slightly less warm than yesterday, your brain treats these as emergencies. Not because you are dramatic, because your threat detection system, tuned by early experience, is doing exactly what it was trained to do. And here is the cruel cycle this creates. You feel the emergency signal. Your response is to give more warmth, more effort, more accommodation, because that is the strategy your nervous system learned. But that giving, when it is driven by anxiety rather than genuine desire, creates an imbalance. And imbalance in relationships creates exactly the kind of instability your nervous system was trying to prevent. You give more. They give less, not necessarily out of malice, but because the dynamic allows it. You interpret their reduced effort as a sign that you need to try harder. You try harder. The imbalance deepens. And underneath all of it, the quiet ache grows louder. This is the pattern, and it is exhausting in a way that is very hard to explain to people who do not live it. You have probably tried to fix this on your own. You have probably told yourself to stop caring so much. You have tried playing it cool, waiting before you text back, not following up on things, pulling back your energy. And it worked for about 4 days before it started to feel so unbearable and so inauthentic that you just went back to being yourself, back to caring, back to showing up, back to wondering why you cannot just stop. Here is why those strategies always collapse. They target your behavior without touching the underlying nervous system state. Telling yourself to care less when your brain is in genuine threat response is like telling yourself to feel less physical pain. The instruction does not reach the level where the pain is being generated. The only things that actually work operate at the level where the pattern lives. So let me give you 4 concrete tools. 2 for the mind, 2 for the nervous system. And I want you to actually use these, not just find them interesting. The first tool is called the audit of origin. What it solves is this. You cannot change a pattern you cannot see clearly. Most people who love hard have never actually traced the pattern to its beginning. They know they give. They do not know where they learned that giving was the cost of love. Here is the action. Take your phone right now, open a notes app, and answer one question honestly. Write it out in full sentences. The question is, in my earliest memory of love feeling uncertain or unpredictable, what did I do to try to make it safe? What was the strategy I developed? You do not need to analyze it extensively. You just need to see it. Because the moment you can name the original strategy, I became very helpful, I became the easy one, I never asked for anything, I performed happiness, you create a small but crucial distance between you and the automatic behavior. It is no longer just who you are. It is something you learned. And things you learned can be unlearned. The second top-down tool is called the reality check log. The problem it addresses is the distorted ledger your brain keeps. When your nervous system is running the anxious attachment program, it dramatically overestimates what you owe and dramatically underestimates what you are owed. It keeps a ledger, but the ledger is wrong. Here is the action. For the next 2 weeks, at the end of each day, write down 2 things. First, one thing I did for someone I care about today. Second, one thing someone did for me today, not grand gestures, small ones. A check-in, a competent response that felt warm, something that showed up. The reason this works is not just about gratitude. It is about reprogramming the data your prefrontal cortex has access to when it is trying to evaluate your relationships. People who love hard have brains that are very good at cataloging what they give and very poor at registering what they receive. This log corrects the sampling error. It does not manufacture positivity. It restores accuracy. Now the bottom-up tools. These work directly on the nervous system, because some of what drives the over-giving pattern is not a belief you can think your way out of. It is a body state, a chronic low-level alarm that keeps telling you love is not safe and you need to work for it. The third tool is called the regulation reset. The problem it solves is the hyperactivated nervous system state that drives compulsive giving. When your threat system is on, your body is in a mild but constant stress response. And from inside that stress response, pulling back feels like danger. Receiving feels suspicious. Resting in a relationship feels like the calm before something goes wrong. Here is the action. Once a day for 5 minutes, practice what is called physiological sighing. It sounds almost too simple. You take a normal breath in through your nose, then before you exhale, you take one more short, sharp breath in on top of it, and then you exhale slowly and completely through your mouth. Repeat this 5 times, then breathe normally for the remaining time. Stanford neuroscientist Andrew Huberman's research shows this specific breathing pattern is the fastest known way to reduce physiological stress, faster than meditation, faster than regular deep breathing. The double inhale fully inflates the air sacs in your lungs and triggers a strong parasympathetic response. What that means in plain terms is that it physically lowers the alarm level in your body, and when your body's alarm level drops, the compulsive urge to give, to fix, to reach out and make sure everything is okay drops with it. Not because you stop caring, but because you are no longer acting from panic. I want to pause here and say something directly. The first time you try to hold back a check and you want to send, or to let a silence sit without filling it, or to receive care without immediately deflecting or giving something back, it is going to feel genuinely wrong. Not just uncomfortable. Wrong, like you are violating something. Like you are being selfish or cold or unlike yourself. That feeling is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that you have found the edge of the pattern. The discomfort is exactly where the change lies. It is not a sign to retreat. It is a sign that you have arrived at the place where the real work begins. The fourth tool is called the receiving practice. The problem it solves is this. People who love hard are often catastrophically bad at receiving, not because they are ungrateful, but because receiving requires a vulnerability that the nervous system, trained to be the giver and the strong one and the one who does not need, finds genuinely threatening. Receiving means depending, and depending, in your experience, has historically come with risk. Here is the action. The next time someone does something kind for you, offers help, gives a compliment, checks in on you, do not deflect it. Do not immediately minimize it or return it with something bigger. Instead, pause for 3 seconds, let it land, then say one sentence that actually acknowledges receiving it. Not just thank you, something like that actually means a lot to me, or I really needed to hear that today. 3 seconds, one sentence. That is it. What this does is train your nervous system to associate receiving with safety rather than danger. It is a micro practice, but it is a powerful one. Because every time you let something in without immediately giving it back or pushing it away, you are adding a data point to your brain's model of what love can feel like. And slowly, over time, that model starts to update. Now I need to make a distinction that I would be doing you harm by leaving out. Everything in this video is written for people whose pattern of loving hard and receiving less is driven by internal programming, a nervous system response, a learned strategy from early experience. And for those people, the tools in this video are genuinely useful, but sometimes the imbalance in a relationship is not about your nervous system. Sometimes it is about the other person. Some people are genuinely not capable of the kind of reciprocity you are looking for, not because of a character flaw necessarily, but because of their own unexamined patterns, their own avoidance, their own incapacity for depth. And in those cases, the answer is not to regulate yourself better or give more strategically or wait longer. The answer is to grieve the relationship for what it cannot be and to invest that enormous love you carry in a direction that can actually hold it. If you have done the genuine internal work, if you have examined your own patterns, if you have asked for what you need clearly and directly, and the imbalance persists, that is not a call to try harder. That is information. Listen to it. Here is something you can say to yourself the next time the pull to over. Give starts. Not to suppress it, just to pause before it becomes automatic. I notice I want to reach out right now to manage an uncomfortable feeling. I am allowed to sit with this feeling without acting on it immediately. My value in this relationship is not determined by how much I give. I am allowed to receive. I am allowed to need. I am allowed to be loved with the same energy I offer. Wanting that is not selfish, it is honest. And I am learning slowly that love that requires constant effort to keep alive is not love that is mine. Here is what is true about you. You did not become someone who loves this hard out of weakness. You became this way because you were perceptive enough to figure out what kept connection alive and loyal enough to practice it until it became your entire identity. That is not a small thing. The capacity you have to notice, to care, to show up, to hold people is genuinely rare. The world is full of people who love carelessly, who are present only when it is easy, who disappear when things require something real. You are not one of those people. You have never been one of those people. What you are learning now is not to love less. It is to love with the kind of steady self-respect that makes you impossible to quietly take for granted. You are learning to give from fullness instead of fear, to receive without flinching, to let the people who cannot match you go, not with bitterness, but with the quiet understanding that your love deserves a place where it is returned. You did not build this pattern because something was wrong with you. You built it because it was the most logical response to the love you were given. And now, carefully, you are building something different. In the next video, we are going to look at the other side of this. The people who receive love easily but struggle to stay when things get real. The ones who pull away the moment connection deepens. If there is someone in your life who does that, or if that part of yourself sounds uncomfortably familiar, that video was made for you.